All right, welcome back everyone. Let's have some fun today. We're going to do variety in watercolor, and I think many times you've seen me do swatches, and if you go back, if you type in Chris Petri swatches on YouTube, you'll probably find 3 or 4 videos on swatches that I've done, and they're really important. I think every watercolor artist should really keep a small catalog of swatches in their notebook or alongside their art table or wherever you work, so you can reference them when you're let's say creating a painting, or you're going to be working with some practice exercises and you need some ideas. I think they can really be helpful. Does this make sense to have like a small group of reference material for your watercolor art? Well, I think this is really going to be a help, and I will kind of just demonstrate what I'm going to talk about here as a variety in watercolor. So variety in the sense of our paint application to our watercolor paper. So I'm just going to take out our palette. It's in a plastic bag to keep the paints moist. I keep my palette in the refrigerator when I'm not really working a lot. Let's say if I'm during the week, if I'm not working a whole lot. So I take my palette out, and we have some clean fresh water, and that's really all we need for this: a pencil and a watercolor brush. Kolinsky Sable watercolor brush, round watercolor brush with a good point. And this is a Raphael brush, number 8. And we'll look at these first. These are small swatches I did a while back, and essentially what we have is colors. So I think what I did here was I took some of my greens, blues, and purple and reds, and I kind of made some small swatches just to kind of get the feel of what the color looks like of the different colors. And this is probably these are the colors of my palette. This is a Viridian green, Prussian blue, cerulean blue. So I think I mixed different blues and greens here. This looks like all Viridian. This is Prussian, maybe some cerulean. This is mineral violet, and this would be alizarin crimson here. And so I guess what I'm saying variety is we can use just straight out of the tube color when we mix, but to step it up a notch and to make our watercolors even more exciting, we can take these colors and then add to them to make them more exciting, have more variety of color, tonal value, and just texture in a sense. So I'll explain what I am going to do here. Okay, now if you're going to make swatches, which I encourage everyone to do, you want to, I would say you keep them like neat, make them nice and neat with some artist tape. I think, visually they're more pleasant to look at if we make our swatches with some tape, and then we can pull up the tape. And so we could just take tape, and you can do it in any kind of configuration you want. You can make them really large, small. I think it's good to do different sizes to practice your brush work. So here we're going to make these and then here on the center portion of the swatches I go with 2 rows of tape. So what the 2 rows of tape does on this here is it keeps the white border the same throughout the entire swatch exercise we're doing here. And then the same would be with these here. And they don't have to be perfect in size. Does that make sense? We're just doing this for practice and to have some reference material when we're working in the studio and creating our artwork and painting, and just thinking about different colors we might like to use in a painting or so forth. Or if we're looking at an artist painting we want to sort of practice or try to reproduce, we can kind of look at our swatches and then say, okay, that's looks like this color combination or that or so forth. But really the main idea again here is variety within our watercolor paints application. So what we'll do here is we'll just have some fun. I'll put my water over here to the right. Okay, and I'll take my pencil here. Actually, since we have the swatches taped out, we won't need our pencil really. But we can use the pencil later and just write underneath each of the swatches what colors we used. After you get it makes sense if you can to try to maybe every once in a while like write down the colors you use if you can, because then you can remember your colors a little more quickly. So if you keep your same colors in your palette all the time, if you're using your same colors over and over, and then if you write them down occasionally, then you'll memorize them by name, and then when you're looking at them on swatches or in paintings or other people's paintings or so forth, you'll be able to identify the colors a lot quicker and say, oh yeah, that's a alizarin crimson, that's a sap green, that's a cerulean blue, and so forth. So get familiar with your colors. That makes sense? Okay, so we're getting familiar with our colors. Now we're going to say let's have the idea of variety. So let's start off with maybe a blue. So we'll start off with a cobalt blue. And just, straight into the color. Okay. Then let's go in with some cerulean blue. And some French ultramarine. I'll do a little splashing. Okay. Okay, so that's a nice variety of blues. We used 3 of our blues. We used cerulean blue, cobalt blue, and French ultramarine blue. And we mixed all those 3 blues together on our swatch here. So we'll kind of look at that as we continue on, just to see how it's doing. And then I'm going to go in with just a little added French ultramarine, the same 3 colors. And then what I'll try to accomplish here is getting some darker tonal values. So that would be, this is some cobalt blue. And then finally I'll use some cerulean blue, the straight out of the tube. So I'm just going right into the paint. And I just have a little bit of water on my brush from cleaning the brush off in the water container. And so here I'm trying to get as much variety as I can. I'm getting variety of tonal value with my blues. I'm using 3 different blue colors here. And as well as I'm using some variety, I'm getting some splashing as well as I work with this. And I'll get some more darker French ultramarine blue and do some more of that splashing. Okay, and let's go in and we'll do some warmer colors now. Let's go in with this is a yellow ochre, and then we have raw sienna. It's pretty close to the same as yellow ochre, but it's more transparent, raw sienna. Then let's use a little cadmium orange. So we'll go in with some cadmium orange. And some raw umber. We're kind of sticking within the same goldish brown warm colors here. You can leave some white too of the paper in your swatches if you think you'd like to. You can take some paint off the swatches a little bit here and there to get more variety yet. while you're working. That would just be rinsing your brush off in the water bucket, drying your brush off a little bit on a piece of paper towel or napkin or tissue, and then just doing a little swipe of the paper while it's still wet. And let's try just a little bit of the burnt sienna into that. And then we'll start to, since we have the lighter tonal values, now we'll go in and go straight tube color. And that's burnt sienna. And then maybe we'll do some straight raw sienna. Sometimes, like certain colors, you just notice they get a little more lumpy, and you need to work them out, smooth them out a little bit on your palette first before you use them. But you can also, to get more variety, you can add them right into the paint with a little bit of thickness to them. And does that make sense? Maybe going with a little thicker paint. Don't feel like you always have to go with a flat, smooth wash of watercolor paint. You can add a little more extra paint on there, and it adds more variety. It makes it look more interesting to me. I think a lot of people agree with that when they look at a painting, a finished painting, and they see variety. It's more exciting than just kind of a plain type of look to it without much variety. Okay, so then we can go with a lighter. Let's go with that's a cadmium yellow light, and I'll use some cadmium yellow. So this is a lighter version of this one. And then even as we go, does it make sense? We can start thinking about what these colors might represent: sky or water, earth tones like the ground, like a mountainside, or some earth along a beach, some mountainside, as well as other things like wood on the side of a barn, and this could be maybe like a car or something. It could be anything. These colors can represent anything, but maybe you like to paint landscapes a lot more. So if you like to paint landscapes a lot more, then they might represent. Okay, so that's the lighter version with the lemon, cadmium lemon yellow. And then again, you could do some of that, dry off the brush, rinse off the brush, dry off the brush, and then kind of do a little lifting of paint. Adds more variety. Okay, so here again, the key is variety. Let's do some variety. Constantly think of variety, how we can make our painting more exciting, because when we're doing paintings, we have to go way more beyond the what we're seeing out in front of us. If we're painting from still life or even a photograph or whatever we're painting, we have to get more exciting, bring more variety, more excitement, more interesting things to our paper, because actual reality is way more exciting. Everything is alive and out in nature, the reality of things. So when we're using just paper and paint, we have to kind of try to bring a lot more to the table when we're doing our artwork, so that it's it just doesn't look like a dull piece of paper with some paint on it. All right, now let's we'll go with some greens. So I'm using some greens here. That would be a Viridian green here, sap green, and some olive green. All right, and then we'll just go with the darker tonal values of these colors, just to give more variety, more interest, more of a look of contrast and tonal value change.